So today on Landry.Audio, we're speaking with Sigurd Wongraven, otherwise known as the frontman for Satyricon, Satyr, who I believe is in his home at Norway at the time, and it's 9 a.m. over there. So thank you very much for speaking with us so early in the morning, Satyr.
Thank you for having me. It's not that early when you have two kids.
Yes, we were just talking about this beforehand, so we'd love to look at a few of these topics of being a father and how this has changed your outlook on life. But first, Satyricon is coming down under again to Australia very shortly. So, when was the last time that you guys were down here?
Soundwave in 2014, so 4 years. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So I would have missed you at that time. I was living in the UK, and I saw you guys in London with. I think you guys were touring with Thonic at that point in time.
Well, in that case, that was probably in 2013. Yeah.
13. Okay, perfect. So do you enjoy the warmer climates?
I enjoy Australia, not because it's warm, but because I like the atmosphere in Australia. I think it's well, I mean, first and foremost, it's the people that make the country. But it is. I find Australia to be a relaxed type of atmosphere that I like, and I find that the energy of the people is a positive one. So I always enjoy Australia. I was actually discussing that with family last night that I'm kind of disappointed that we don't have any time in Australia this time around, because it is literally traveling to the other side of the world, and we always try and spend a couple of extra days while we're there and just enjoy Australia. But this time around, that won't be possible. We will just have to come in, play, and then go straight to Japan and do our job there. So, but the way I see it is that I'm honored that the music that I make gives me the opportunity to, it takes me all around the world. And in the last 11 months, we've been to North America, all over South America, all over Europe twice, the Middle East, and now we're doing Australia and Japan as well. So, there's a lot of people in Norway that, they most people here that are, know anything about music is quite aware of Norwegian black metal, and it's solid reputation and influence abroad, and I think they're, fascinated and excited by it, but they think it's so huge. And I always keep telling them it's not that huge. It's not, none of us are going around playing arenas. We're just playing clubs. But I guess what is kind of unique is that wherever you go, in the most remote corner of the world, there's always going to be some people who listen to Norwegian black metal. And that's interesting, because you have artists over here that might play arenas, but they can only play arenas in, 5 countries. And other than that, no one knows who they are. So they don't get to tour the world. They get to play the same 5 countries for their whole career at the most. But we can go anywhere. That's fun.
Do you think, Norwegian black metal is still, maybe 25, 30 years old now, but do you think it's become a part of the national identity for the country?
Well, at least for those who have what should I say, cultural awareness, at least for the people who care about, consume, think about, and talk about music, arts, and culture. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that we noticed down here is that it's taken us quite a long time to be able to get tours down here, and I understand that we're quite far off, but for fans like myself, we don't really know about the business. could you sort of give us an insight of how difficult it is to get down here from just from a logistic and cost perspective to sort of tour, 5 or 6 cities way down in the bottom end of the earth?
Yeah. No, I mean the costs involved are enormous, and when we come to play Australia, it's not necessarily very lucrative, to put it like that, but it's something that we choose to do because it doesn't eat up our entire schedule anyway, and it's a great place to come to. But yeah, so imagine just like when you go somewhere and you try and break even on your logistic costs, you typically want to play 20, 30 shows or something like that, not 5 or 6. Also, when you move around with personnel and gear, in North America or Europe, you typically travel in a tour bus, which is much more efficient, both cost-wise and logistically. While as in South America and in Australia, you have to fly from show to show, pretty much. Compared to tour buses, it is, the cost involved is substantial. So yeah.
And your online presence these days shows you very much as a committed family man. How do you sort of balance the expectations of touring as your livelihood with being a father and husband these days?
I do shorter tours. That's really what it comes down to. So, I said, speaking of that European tour with Phonic that you mentioned from 2013, that was almost 8 weeks, and I knew as I was coming back from that tour that this is this is it. I won't be doing. I knew then that this was going to be the last tour of my life with that kind of length, and for me it's maximum a month, and even that is more than I can appreciate. But from time to time we do it. So 3-4 weeks. Yeah.
Fair enough. As I mentioned to you before we started the recording of this, I was listening to some other interviews that you had done recently, and I think you had done the metal podcast with a gentleman over in Ireland, and you guys were talking about how you originally didn't enjoy playing live many years ago. Has that changed for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's I didn't enjoy playing live in the 90s, and that was because, well, different. I think first of all, I didn't really know what the possibilities were, and I didn't know how to. It's just like, okay, so really simple things. I could sit there, basically, be the guy that together with the agent put together everything, right? And then I would walk on board the bus, and then, someone had taken, like, all the decent bunks were gone, and let's say, like one of the roadies would put all these suitcases in front of my bunk, so basically there was no way of getting in and out, and I thought that's just the way it is,
Right.
And then I realized a few years into it is that I'm in a position where I can say, no, you don't get to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
This is my bed, and you don't put your stuff there. And I did, to put it like this, I didn't really understand that I was the CEO of this company, and once I started to realize that I can make this a little bit more comfortable for myself by saying like, yes, I do have to do a little bit more than these other people, but that also puts me in a position where I can ask for certain things that they can't ask for, and that made life a little bit more bearable to me, just because a lot of times, just for the same reason, it's like, some of the people who work for Satyricon, there are people who do a lot of stuff, and they might ask me for things that I cannot necessarily give to all of them, but to certain people I would say, yes, you can have that, because I know that they work really, really, really hard, and I need the best version of that guy at all times, whilst there are some people who do important stuff, but they don't work necessarily that hard, that ask for things that I don't give them, because they don't really need it. They would like to have it, but they don't need it. And I started trying to find out what is it that I have to, what is it that has to be a certain way. And once I've started figuring that out, things got a little bit better for me. And as for the, travel part and all that, I guess what is unfortunate about, be it, playing live, or, recording a music video, or doing a photo shoot, or whatever, it's just there's a lot of waiting involved. And to give you an example, since we're, right at the end of our European festival run, so here's typically what happens. I get up at 3:30 a.m. And I shower and get dressed. I have 2 glasses of water, and then go get into a cab. Then 15 minutes later, I'm on the other side of downtown Oslo, where I will meet with a couple of the other guys and a shuttle van that's going to take us and the guitars to Oslo airport. And then 45 minutes later, we're at the airport. Then we do our check-in routine and whatnot, and then we have a flight departing at, let's say, 6:30. Then there's a couple of hours on the flight to somewhere in Europe, and then we're being picked up by a shuttle van that will take us a couple of hours to some festival site and hotel. We'll check in, try and sleep a little bit, and then get up, and then shuttle van for, let's say, half an hour to some festival site, eat, try and get ready to play a show, go out there, and then play for, let's say, 60 minutes. And then it's, shuttle back for half an hour, shower, eat a little bit, and then maybe sleep for 5 hours until we have to get up, and then 2 hours in a shuttle van, a couple of hours at the airport, and 2 hours on a plane back to Norway, and then takes me an hour to get back, and then I'm back here with the family, and all of this for playing 60 minutes, So you spend a couple of days to perform 1 hour, So can you imagine, like, when you go out there and you see a tired, drunk festival crowd go like, yeah, and then you go to yourself, what the fuck is wrong?
Is it worth it?
Yeah. So sometimes, that can be very frustrating, but there are other times, of course, when you come out there and, there's this hellish roar, and you think to yourself, wow, this is worth it. And I think, I guess what I've done my whole career is that I feel like I've been saying out loud what all artists talk about backstage, you know. And I think we all enjoy playing live, and I think we all feel frustrated and let down by that type of life at times, and then I think we all enjoy the opportunities and the privileges that come with, you know, being a touring musician, but also that is frustrating to us who, yeah.
Do you notice any difference in crowds or countries? You mentioned that they're all sort of clubs, so you know, you go around the world and you tour a lot of the same spots frequently. Are there favorite spots or areas that you know you have these rabid fan bases?
Yeah, I mean, we've got good fans everywhere. It's not like you know, there's one continent or one country, and it keeps changing. See, that's the interesting thing. Is like, you know, we were playing Santiago, Chile in 2011. I remember that.
And I was just going to say that, yeah. For whatever reason, black metal seems to be extremely popular. Every time artists tend to film like a live DVD from, you know, black and death metal, Chile seems to be the spot that they're always doing it in.
That's the thing, is that we played there in 2011. I don't remember that as being, you know, particularly exciting in 2011. However, when we played there last year, it was one of the greatest live experiences of my life, basically. And why it was so different in 2007 compared to 2011 is not, I don't know the answer to that. And sometimes, you know, I was speaking to the singer in Norwegian black metal band Mayhem a couple of days ago. I met him at a festival that we played, and we were talking about, you know, Italy, from basically from during the 2000s, that decade. Italy was just one of the best markets that you could play. Like, you know, attendances would be great, and crowds were fantastic. And this decade, black metal is just in a really, really bad place in Italy, you know. So there's so you can't really say like, oh yeah, like Italy is great or Italy is horrible, because it keeps changing. It keeps changing. Yeah.
So the fan base in and of itself is organic, like a lot of things.
Sure.
All right. Okay. There's a lot of animosity expressed by artists these days towards the way that music has been made a commodity, and a lot of artists who really don't even believe that record sales matter anymore. I guess I will get your opinion on that, but can you give us an insight into how record deals are structured now with labels, and in terms of how they fund an album, and how that ties in with touring and merchandising and all these things that allow them to keep themselves afloat?
Well, I mean, it's like you're saying, they try and get involved with the entire business aspect of the band. So, you know, with a cut of live income or merch income or whatever it may be. For us, it's a little bit different though, because, you know, for the last few years or so, bands have chosen a path where they say, you know, like, we're going to just own the master recording ourselves, and then, you know, get ourselves some.
So they're almost leasing it to the label.
Exactly. They're leasing it to the label, and I see more and more bands doing that, and that's been, I guess. And I see more and more bands doing that, and that's been, I guess, the thing that's been going on for the last 5 years or something. But we actually started doing that in the 90s, in the late 90s. So many of the things that we did. So, for example, when we signed to Roadrunner in 2005, and they released, and I guess at the time they were the biggest independent record label, and you know, the albums Now Diabolical, The Age of Nero, and the self-titled album Satyricon, they're all released by Roadrunner and marketed by Roadrunner, but the masters were owned by Satyricon and leased to Roadrunner. And that's a model that we started using already in the late 90s, because we felt back then that to sign away the ownership of our music for life wasn't, we struggled to see, like, why would that be something we would benefit from, you know? Couldn't find any good reason to do it that way. So we, not everything that we've done, but most of what we've done, we own ourselves. And I think as we're going through all these changes with, you know, from physical format to streaming and all the problems everyone has been facing with illegal downloads and everything, to, as an artist, to own everything that you do yourself is essential. So we're not that involved with the type of 360 deals that many bands are, because when we speak to record companies, it's not really so much about, like, what do you get, this or that. It's just like, we have this and we're paying for this. Would you like to lease it or not? You know?
Yeah, right. Ah, interesting. So, you know, when music is released, it's initially extreme. So when you look at something like, you know, Kiss or Marilyn Manson or yourselves, have you ever thought about the fact that, you know, maybe in 15 years, you know, one of your early albums could end up being the commercial for a Microsoft product or something along those lines?
Yeah, I never imagined anything like that.
So how, you know, having been involved with the scene from its infancy, how do you think the genre has changed over time? And I guess, do you think its values are the same now?
Well, you know, in general, when you're discussing this with fans or media, the chosen angle is typically how has Satyricon changed? And what I keep saying is that I'm not sure that Satyricon has walked away from, you know, black metal, but I'm pretty sure that black metal has changed a lot in the last 20, 25 years, and that we have been a part in making that change together with many other bands. And when we use references, I think we have to acknowledge that we're a part of a moving vehicle. We're not standing still. It's not 1991 anymore. And the fact that, you know, black metal and Satyricon and other bands sound different than back then only makes sense. And as far as principles, I feel that the people that I know that had strong principles back then still have that today, and the people that didn't have it back then still don't have it. You know, there are people out there that I have known since 93, 94 that I never felt were really hardcore when it came to, you know, black metal philosophy and way of life, and, you know, dedication to the craft, and black metal as an institution that is bigger than you as an individual. There are some people that never really subscribed to that type of thinking in 1994, and I know these people and they still play, and they're still not hardcore, and they never were. And there are other people that I know that were very hardcore back then, and they're still very hardcore these days. So it's, I guess these principles and ideals, they are in the ownership of individuals much more than a big group of people, if you see what I'm saying. Yeah.
I do. Look, I don't want to get overtly political in this, but there were a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you about. And, you know, black metal, going back to these I guess, original, back in the scene, had sort of these pre-Christian Odinistic beliefs about the people of the land. You know, you're a worldly guy and you get the chance to travel around now. How do you think that sort of plays into today's political environment, where we've got a very defined, you know, left versus right, open borders versus nationalistic belief system? Because, you know, even outside of the context of music, this is a very big political talking point in Australia, as it is in the US, as it is specifically in Germany and Europe. And black metal was very, very strong in its opinions on a lot of these things in its infancy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that is the case anymore, though. What should I say? I think I find in general the heavy metal community to be extremely tolerant. There is a difference between you know, like a I guess, you know, redneck Pantera fan and someone listening to, I guess, more underground type of bands somewhere in Europe. You know, there might be a difference right there. The environment that they are part of, and the way they've been raised, and the kind of things that they're interested in, and how committed they are to heavy metal culture. You know, some people like heavy metal because it's simply the music that appeals to them, and that's about it. And they might, you know, have stronger political opinions, but I think the people who are committed to heavy metal as a lifestyle, not just like some music they listen to, in general, seems to be very tolerant people when it comes to you know, I know a lot of underground metal people, and they don't really strike me as, you know, being racist or homophobic or in general. Being weird is okay.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing. And
would it be safe to say that you would, I guess, consider a lot of these national socialist ideas that are in black metal, they're pretty fringe as far as you're concerned?
I don't really, you know, I don't see it anywhere. I remember there were some things like that coming out of, you know, Germany and perhaps Eastern Europe many, many years ago, but I can't say that I've seen a lot of that for a long, long time. And whenever I would from time to time see things like that, it was, you know, baby band stuff. None of the really big bands were ambassadors of any such direction. And I think, if anything, when you see, like, you know, more hardcore, you know, political views today, you'll find that, I mean, probably in the White House, you know. That's
just take a sip of water anyway.
that's where all the like, you know, statements that divide are coming from. Yeah.
So, on a separate, with the change in sound that Satyricon's made over the ages, it reminds me of another one of my favorite bands I listened to, which was Entombed, which really adopted this death and roll sound. You know, we're talking about the philosophy of black metal, but do you guys consider yourself a black metal anymore? Are you just a metal band?
Well, no, I consider myself as a member of a black metal band and a songwriter in the black metal genre. And this comes back to what I was saying earlier, is that, the music style changes. But however, when it comes to, the rock influences, what I was thinking back then, which I started analyzing Bathory, Venom, Celtic Frost, these bands from the 80s, and thinking to myself that actually the stuff that I like the most is more straightforward. And I felt that we had done a lot of things that were avant-garde and progressive, and I thought to myself that I wanted to try and make, more muscular riffs that had their feet more firmly planted on the ground. And I felt that that's what I was hearing if I was listening to, Circle of the Tyrants by Celtic Frost, or, Seven Gates of Hell by Venom, or, various Bathory songs, Necromancy or whatever, and or Race the Dead. And I felt that what we were trying to do by incorporating those type of riffs and that style of songwriting is that we weren't really bringing rock and roll into black metal. I felt that we were bringing more old black metal type of thinking into current day black metal. And that was my approach. But I think what happens a lot of the time is people aren't interested enough in music to reflect upon these things, so it's hard for them to see the connections. I think it's interesting, when I hear something, is to try and understand where does that come from, and how does this link up with something else, and if you are interested in these things, you start realizing a lot of connections within the world of music that I, as a music fan, find to be deeply fascinating.
And, you guys have shown yourself to be adaptive to change through your discography. But have you ever found, do you ever feel the pressure of expectation of being Satyricon and being sort of trapped in a particular sound or expectation of sound?
Not really. I mean, I'm not sure I feel that I can do, like a electronica record, but I'm not sure that.
Why not? Morbid Angel did it.
But I'm not sure that I want to do one either. I mean, most of the time I'm fine doing what I'm doing. I remember when I was genuinely surprised when I started promoting the previous Satyricon record, and then it was presented to me by many journalists as the inclusion of singer Sivert Hayem on our single Phoenix was a controversial and perhaps even brave move. And I like I was saying to our live bass player, I said, why is that controversial and why is that brave? First of all, this is a guy that he doesn't exactly sound like, like a happy guy. He spent his whole life playing dark music in one way or another. Secondly, what he's doing with us is not happy stuff either, and it wouldn't be the first time in history where someone is singing on the metal songs with a clean voice either. So I that, yeah, like my live bass player suggested, is sometimes I perhaps underestimate how conservative, the metal scene can be. But whenever I do reflect upon that and see it, I still do what I would like to do because I should be the one in charge of how Satyricon sounds, not someone outside the band. That's the way I think. So yeah.
Do you ever worry about, as you, I guess possibly the limitations of what you can do as we all get older? Like, is there a sort of a thought process of, where the band heads, and can Frost continue to, play the way that he does for another couple of decades and those sorts of issues?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. That is something that I am sure. I'm sure most bands from the same era as my band think about, and perhaps have some make some locker room jokes about, but I'm not sure they all discuss it seriously. But that is something that I've tried to discuss seriously with my guys, and they all find it deeply uncomfortable. They really do. When I bring up these issues, when I start talking about it, because I talk to some of the people that I play with. I say, listen, you're 45 now. In 5 years, you'll be 50. And what are you going to do to make sure that your body allows you to do what you want to do when you're 50? What are your plans for that? And that is something that makes people deeply uncomfortable when you start discussing these things. But you have to talk about these things, because once they get there, it's too late. They have to do it now.
I was going to ask you a few other questions, but this is probably the ideal time to segue to this question. A few years ago, you were diagnosed with a brain tumor. When you're healthy, successful, and you've already got goals established and you're achieving them, mentally, what happens to you when you really get hit with something so devastating?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, I'm fine. What happened to me is that I had a seizure that sent me to the emergency room, and then after a bunch of CT, MR, and this and that, they found a cyst inside my brain that had caused some problems, and then it seemed like that one was particularly bad because it basically caused my whole body to shut down, and I was really, really sick for a while, and then gradually started getting my strength back, and then trying to figure out how to do things. And my physician said that listen, every time you're having a bad day, try and write down what you've done, and then when you're having a good day, try and write that down as well, so you can try and start and understand the pattern here. What is it that's not good for you, and what is good for you, and you have to try and become an expert on your own life and your situation. And so that took a long time to figure out, and I also made changes that I thought were likely to be good ones, and started implementing them as a part of both my personal and professional life. And I Yeah, of course. When something like this happens, there's a bunch of existential questions, and yes, you do, of course, realize that nothing is more important than health, and you can be, whoever you like, but without your health, you have nothing. Yeah, you surely reflect upon these things, but I was very task oriented. I was very much thinking like, okay, so this is not going to work. I can't live my life like this, and I can't live with this type of situation. So how do we come out of this, vicious circle? That was my goal, and I feel that I've managed to do that, and I am fine. The only thing that I really have to do is I have to and now and then go and take some MR scans of my brain, and if I have certain symptoms or things going on, I know who I have to go and see and get some advice from. But other than that, I would say that my life is normal. Yeah.
You use the word existentialism. Does that, going through this, does this change or adapt any of your opinions on God and the afterlife?
No, I had no thoughts like that. Mine were really, really different. Mine were, my thoughts were the type of things that, that I'm a father, and that it's crucial that that I can continue to be a solid father for my sons, and that I have to do whatever is necessary to enable that. Those were the type of so the responsibility that comes with fatherhood was something that I thought a lot about. I thought a lot about art, as I'm walking around in my living room talking to you now. As I see there's a bunch of art on the walls that wasn't here before all of this happened, and the reason for that is because I define myself as a person that didn't have money to purchase art, and art for me was something that I would have to enjoy at galleries and exhibitions, museums, whatnot. But then I coming out of the hospital, lying in bed all day long, sleeping, resting, or reading books, gives you a lot of time to think. And then I started thinking to myself that so why would I, as someone who's been interested in art since my teens, why would I define myself as a person that is not good enough to purchase serious art? And why would all these other people that not even care, but just have a bunch of stuff to make it seem as they are sophisticated people, why should they have art and not me and my family? And what's the point of working so hard if I can't even buy art when it means so much to me? So those were the type of thoughts more than God and afterlife that I had, and that resulted in me buying a bunch of art.
Right. We spoke about this briefly before we turned on the recorder, but one of the things that's quite interesting to me is looking at some of your social media posts that you do on areas like Instagram, and the way that as you're talking now, how open you are about your family and fatherhood. It's a bit of a juxtaposition to me, having grown up with a lot of people that were influenced by black metal and its perceptions around, being evil and all these sorts of things, but how outward you are in your perception as a family man and a loving father. I guess what I'm really asking about that is, are you conscious about that? And I guess the difference of who Satyricon markets itself as versus you as an individual and a human being?
Well, I guess, I felt that growing up, my parents, and in particular my mom, always kind of, said to me that, and whatever it is that you would like to do, go ahead and do it. And, you don't have to apologize for being who you are. And if I wanted to do something that was dramatically different from everyone else, I said, fine, that's what you want to do, go ahead. And so first and foremost, what that does to you is that it gives you confidence, right? I don't, a lot of people suggest that confidence is something that you build as a result of achieving things. I'm not necessarily 100% sure that is right. That surely, like self-esteem can be influenced by these things. But I think first and foremost, confidence comes from the way that you've been brought up. And if you're told, that if you want to be an author and you have parents telling you, like, really, an author, you sure about this? That's kind of difficult. Most people can't do that. Are you sure you want to be an author? Then you start fucking with a child's head, But if you say, sure, author, yeah, that sounds great, go for it, you might get yourself an author as a, son or daughter. And I think it is that type of, being at peace with who I am is what has always enabled me to, being straight up about who I am. I don't feel like when I am, at my darkest with Satyricon, that is a fake version of myself. That is 100% me, and when I am a loving father, that is also 100% me, and one doesn't rule out the other. And I would feel deeply uncomfortable if I in some way or another had to make it seem as if, my kids don't mean the world to me, because that wouldn't, fit with people's perception of the frontman in Satyricon. I mean, if that's the case, I don't think I want to be the frontman in Satyricon, because I am the frontman in Satyricon, and when I do that, everything you see is me, and there is no, there is no public version of me and a private version. It's always me. And that's, I guess, if you're a fan of the music, that should make you feel good about listening to Satyricon, is that, this is for real. So, yeah.
Cool. I like to ask this question, and I never get a straight answer. Now, I want to ask you what your favorite album is that you guys have done, and I want to skew away from. It's obviously our new release, so I'll change this question a bit and say, which album that you guys have done sort of stands out for you that you remember the most for a particular defining period of your career.
Well, it's no wonder that you never gotten a straight answer, because you're asking a very difficult question. When we discuss these type of things within the band, I always said that, like, any band who doesn't prefer their new record is a band that needs to go back to the studio, I suppose. That's what I keep saying, because if you release a new record and you think to yourself, it might not be as good as the last two, but it's good, then then you really should be doing something else. Like when I'm done with the process of a new Satyricon album, it is essential to me that whatever outcome must be the greatest thing that we've ever done. So I always feel that with whatever it is that we're doing, that we're in our very best moments. I think the record that perhaps lifted Satyricon onto where the game was on a different level was perhaps Volcano, because that put us in a
certainly change in sound.
Yeah, but there was there's some things that we could do that there was always improvements, and there were always so the budget on the second record was a bit better than the no budget at all on the first record, and then on the third record it was pretty decent, and then all of a sudden there was money involved to do things that we could never do before, just like simple things like hiring an actual photographer instead of having a friend do it for us and things like that. But when we reached Volcano, it was a different thing, because then we weren't just taking the recording process to some of the finest places in the small country of Norway. Then we were really taking the recording process to one of the best recording studios in the world, and we weren't just using some of the best engineers in Norway. We were hiring the services of some of the best engineers in the world, and I felt that working like that, if anything, it didn't compromise my art. If I was trying to make things sound a certain way, I didn't have to give up at some point because we were running out of time. I could say that, okay, even if the meter is running and this takes days when it should only take hours, it's just going to have to take days, and we've got the budget to do it, so let's do it.
Would you let me flip the question on his head then and say which album that you reflect on now are you least happy with?
I suppose the first record. Yeah. Then so when I hear something off of that record, I never feel embarrassed or ashamed or anything like that, because first of all, it is 100% authentic. What I hear on that record is Frost and myself, playing with our hearts on the sleeve, and we really, really did our very best. And I know that at the time, this was the very best that we could do, and I know that to many, many people, that is a fantastic record. To me, it's not a fantastic record, because what I'm hearing is an inexperienced songwriter, I hear a lyricist lacking in experience and maturity. I hear, someone singing, trying to figure out how to do this properly. I hear a lot of bad drumming. I hear a lot of technical things that are completely unnecessary, and some of them just the consequence of basically having no money to do things properly. So, yeah.
I'd like to begin to ask you about your wine business. But before we get onto this, I know that people keep coming at you with this question. But I remember buying the Moonfog sampler in 2000, where you did a couple of tracks outside of Satyricon, and one was Ibon with Phil Anselmo of Pantera. Is there any talk about reviving that, especially, or other side projects that you can clearly do, from your computer these days?
Well, every time when my brother Philip and I meet, we talk about it. Yeah, so that's surely something that we would love to do, but it is hard to make that happen. It is. I'm not really in touch with Fenris and nor is Philip.
Well, that's a different story, yes.
I guess Killjoy of Necrophagia didn't necessarily. Yeah, I don't know if he, in terms of lyrics, that was pretty much Philip for the most part, and in terms of music, that was 95% me, if not more. So I'm sure we would. I mean, Philip and I, just being brutally honest, Philip and I could do Ibon without Fenris and without our late brother Killjoy. But I think that we should have finished it when we were working on this back in late 90s, early 2000s. But frankly speaking, it was Philip's addiction at the time that ruined this whole project. That's all there is to it. We could talk about this and that, but that's what it comes down to. It was at the time, it was beyond fucked up, and but he really was. Like we were in the studio trying to do things. I'd come out from the recording room. I'd find him, lying passed out on pills, heroin, whatever, on the floor, and with his entourage surrounding him, not wanting to interfere or do anything that could offend him, because he was the big guy. And then I'd be like thinking to myself, what the hell is this? I love this guy and he's a great musician, but I'm a black metal guy. I'm not a Pantera fan. And when I travel from, the other side of the world to come work, I'm here to work, not to, do drugs. So for me, that was a deeply frustrating period that really upset me. But I consider Philip one of my very best friends and an outstanding musician. So in one way or another, I would love to do more music with Philip at some point. That's for sure.
It's really a shame that period of time, because personally, I mean, you've sort of expressed that you're not a Pantera fan, but I really loved those last few albums that I did. They were just really straightforward and very heavy. But even people that I know who are watching them live around that period of time said that he was really in a bad spot for quite a few years. Did you know him for a long time before that sort of period of turmoil?
No, I didn't. And perhaps if I would have, maybe things would have been a little bit easier. But no, I can't remember if it was 98 or 99 where I got to know him, but might have been 98, I suppose. But then, and then we were on tour with them in 2000. And I have to say this, though, about their music, is that in hindsight, I like it. I didn't like the music back then when we were, actually on tour with them and had a lot to do with them. But in hindsight, I've grown to like their music. I think the brothers, the way they interact musically, is very intriguing. There's nothing quite like it. This understanding, rhythmical understanding that the Abbott brothers had is unique, and Dime's, guitar playing is phenomenal, of course, but it's very creative, from a rhythmical point of view. And I think Vince's way of playing drums and sort of taking all the awkward timing of Dime's riffs and making it a little bit more powerful and straightforward with his drum arrangements was a unique quality that Vince had. And Rex providing a strong backbone with his playing, and then Philip being just one of the most unique frontmen and singers in modern heavy metal history, I suppose.
I've seen some of the posts that you've got on Instagram with Lars. Obviously, you've managed to do some tours. As a musician, you must interact with a range of people. Is there anyone that you've met or that you've developed a friendship with that we'd be quite surprised that you sort of bumped into and developed a kindred friendship with?
Lars, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I find it, to me, it's still unreal that I get to spend quality time with some of the musicians that I grew up not only just listening to, but deeply admiring, and to be a part of their ecosystem is still a little bit bizarre. There'll be times where I meet with people that I are like living gods to me, and then I sit down with them and sometimes think to myself, what the hell happened? But I guess what is important for me is to just try and get along with people, regardless if they are doing this or that, and have good conversations. That's really what's important to me. So more so like when you're in a band, you meet a lot of people, and some of these friendships might be unusual with living the life you live. I have a friend, an explorer here in Norway, that is a friend of mine that we have once a year we get together and we eat dinner together around Christmas, and we have this big feast, just me and him, a lot of fun. And the rest of the year we don't really meet, we just stay in touch via text message or email from time to time, but that's the only time we meet during the year. But it's always a fantastic dinner. And Erling, his name is Erling, he was the first guy to reach all three poles. So that's the North Pole, South Pole, and Mount Everest. And probably has one of Europe's most impressive selection of contemporary art. And and he's a lot older than me too. But friendships like that are interesting and fascinating, to be able to speak to people that have done some crazy things that I find to be inspiring to listen to their stories and learn from them. But then again, as I said, it isn't so much about like what people do. It's about the quality of the conversation that you can have. Yeah.
So I assume, obviously, this must be aided by drink occasionally. Now you've got your own label of wines, Wongraven Wines, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. How do you get into this? As you know, the metal scene would I would expect you to have a beer, a whiskey, but certainly not to be a wine connoisseur.
Well, that's I guess you don't get into wine in a bottle. It's more like you taste a lot of good bottles over time, sometimes by themselves and sometimes in combination. And I guess between 1997 and 2004, I had many experiences like that made me, quite interested. And then in 05, 06, even more so. And it came to the point where I felt like, people that I was asking for advice, that it didn't make sense to ask them anymore because I had got to the point where I knew more than they did. So then I had to look elsewhere, and then I started buying books online and buying wine magazines. And I also started buying a lot of wine for the purpose of learning, like saying, okay, I'm just going to buy this grape variety or buy a wine from that region, and all with the intent of learning and understanding about wine. And then I would, to the best of my ability at the time, try and write some tasting notes to reflect and understand a little bit better what it is that I was experiencing. And then at some point, I was approached and asked to write a wine book, because I guess the word got out there that, like, here's someone that is really into wine, that knows a few things. And then I said, no, I don't want to write a wine book and then find a conventional wine expert to do that. Instead, that's much better. And then I was being told that actually, what's more exciting is the fact that you're not a conventional expert. That's what will make this a fun book project. And
could I just ask you, are you moving at the moment? Because I'm starting to get a bit of interruption in the connection.
No, not really. But
no, okay.
Try and sit down in a different part of the room. Is this better?
Oh, there we go. Yes, certainly.
Yeah. No, so so I was asked to do this book, and I guess I was kind of talked into doing it, and then I never finished that project, because what happened as I was doing that, I started meeting with a lot of people in wine, and made some friendships, and really put myself in a position where I saw that there is actually a possibility to get involved in wine production that was my own idea, as opposed to the book project, which was someone else's idea, not mine. And then I just started making my own blends based on vinifications done by winemakers that I had made friends with. And I had a couple of blends coming out of Piedmont in northwest Italy. And then next thing was a champagne, obviously, coming out of Champagne, France. And also did a white wine out of the southwest of France, but that project I didn't enjoy so much. I stopped doing that fairly quickly. And then Germany, from 2014 on, making dry Riesling in the Pfalz region.
And so how do you have to designate all these all of these locations are quite far away from each other. Can you not get similar conditions in one area, or why did you feel the need to reach out to these specific regions?
No, because you can't find those conditions in the same area. That's it. So only in Piedmont can you make great wines based around the Barbera and the Nebbiolo grapes, and only in Champagne can you make sparkling wine with the characteristics of Champagne. You can't make it in Burgundy, you can't make it in Syrah, you can't make it in Spain, and you can't make it in Italy. You can get surely good sparkling wine, but not sparkling wine like Champagne. And you can also, I mean, it's not really widespread, but you can make Nebbiolo in Australia, and some do, but it's not like Nebbiolo in Piedmont, Italy. So I am the places that I am because of the characteristics of these particular regions, and there is a lot of travel back and forth to make all these blends, but that's the nature of the game, I suppose.
And so, where can people buy your products? How are you distributing it, and how can people get hold of it?
Basically, only in Norway. I have there is an online store that I believe ships worldwide, based in Germany, called Weinhalle.de, and at Weinhalle.de they sell my dry Riesling out of Pfalz, Germany. And some of the wines that I sell are sold locally in the Pfalz area in Germany. Some are sold locally in Piedmont, northwest Italy, but the vast majority is all sold to a Norwegian importer that distribute them to retailers and restaurants here in Norway. And it's not like I don't want to sell it everywhere. It's more the fact that I don't have time to be everywhere because I am part of Satyricon, and I can't do, there was for a period of time I did sell, wine to North America, and I would have, an importer in New York asked me if I could attend, afternoon tastings in Manhattan, and I said sure. I mean, if I only did this, I could and I would, but I can't do that. And for them, it's hard to sit there and try and make something work commercially if I'm not able to be around and support them doing that. That's one thing, and another thing is it's a luxury problem. Is that some of the wines that I have are thankfully extremely successful in the Norwegian market. So looking at my white wine, it is the most sold white wine in its price category in Norway, and it's four times the volume of number two, and they have currently in the Norwegian wine monopoly retail system, they have more than 17,000 products, beer, spirits, and wines. Vast majority is wine, more than 17,000, and my white wine is on the top 50 list of the most sold products. So we're having a really, really hard time getting enough wine of the right quality to make blends, and we managed, but we work really, really hard to make sure that we can get enough of the right quality, as I said. So then it's hard for us to think about I shouldn't exporting this to England because we can barely serve the Norwegian market.
Yeah, right. And would it still be I was listening to another interview you did recently, and it sounds like you're at least across a lot of the wine regions of Australia. And when we go out to visit some of them, they talk about sort of like their first tier wine, and then it gets squashed down again, and they've got sort of a second, third, and fourth that they go to before it ends up in the dregs. If it doesn't, if there's only a limited amount that can hit sort of your premium end, are you still able to commercialize those sort of second and third, I guess, squishes, do they call them? And it gets sold off to different distributors? Is that part of the process for you?
So what I do is let's see if I understood your question correctly, but my most affordable wines are by Norwegian standards. I guess, medium level price. I don't sell any cheap wines, and that is because I choose to work in regions that are not really known for that type of wine production. So let's say in Italy, if you don't want to make wines in enormous volume at a very affordable price, then you have regions like Puglia further south, or you have Valpolicella in the northeast. But in Piedmont, it's typically some mid-range price and up. And the way that I work is I work from a wine enthusiast point of view. So I have some sort of medium-level price products that sell in considerable volume, but other than that, I have premium products and made in rather limited quantities. And this bulk wine type of thing where you produce millions of liters in the affordable price range type of thing is something that's we've had a lot of it coming out of Western Australia, certain parts of Italy, southwest of France, California, and Chile perhaps. But I have chosen to work in a different way, as I am more a wine enthusiast involved in wine production more so than a wine producer.
Right. Okay. Satyr, look, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a great conversation. Before we finish up, is there anything that you want to add, or maybe touch on a subject that I've not asked you about?
No, I'm fine. I mean, I'm now going into my last week of rehearsals, and then I'm off to Australia. So that'll be good.
This is going to be excellent. We will see you on Friday the 7th. I think you're down here in Sydney. So, look, I might just poke the beast. I'm told you're a Liverpool fan, so I might bring my Arsenal shirt down. But look, it's really nice to speak, and I'm excited to hear the new album being played live, and wish you all the best on the tour. And I hope that we can do this again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers.